Absolutely appreciate that email, Chris, and keep them coming. Thanks very much. Let's turn our attention to the story that we lead off with today. We touched on this yesterday. Obviously, an extremely troubling incident, and many are fearing that it's been a trend at a school, at Rossland School in North Edmonton, where a 14-year-old boy, a grade 8 student, we'll call him Pazzo, was leaving to catch a bus back on April 16th when about 7 students chased him down, tackled him to the ground, wrenched his neck, essentially beat him. He was hospitalized. His family now and advocates on his behalf demanding answers for what appears to be, for all intents and purposes, a racially fueled attack. The N-word was heard as Pazzo is being beaten by these young men. Andrew Parker has been advocating on the family's behalf. He's a good friend of this show. He's co-founder of the Black Teachers Association of Alberta. My man, welcome back, and thanks for making time for us today.
Thank you so much, Ryan, for having me. I wish it was under better circumstances, but being able to speak on behalf of the community and, of course, educators, and, of course, the beautiful city of Champions that I love with my whole heart and soul is something that I will take advantage of. And I do also want to apologize to CBC and CTV and a few others who have reached out. I was deferring most of those interview requests to the family. But Ryan and I have a really good relationship, and I wanted to make sure that I honored our friendship and also honored the family and the whole entire community of Edmonton with this interview. So thank you.
Thanks very much, Andrew. And we appreciate you giving us the exclusive. We know it's an important message, and I know a lot of people are going to be interested in hearing your voice here. Let me ask you something before we get into the story itself. Your opinion on something really played a significant role in an editorial conversation we had yesterday on the show. And that was whether or not to show the video of this young man being beaten. Now, I noticed that on your social media, you said, I am not going to share the video of my young brother being beaten. Can you take us into the decision as to why you did not want people to see it?
Well, there's a few different things at play. Number one is intergenerational trauma. There's brothers and sisters from our community that this happened to 20 and 30 years ago when there was no YouTube, there was no social media, there was no internet, there was no cameras. So some of the situations that happened to the community 20, 10, 15 years ago, we never got an opportunity to get that justice or even to have that rectified. And not only that, I was aware that some kids in the community, if they see that, it's traumatizing to them too. Now, when the CBC and CTV were able to get like some of those videos, then we waited for the family's consent and said, "Is this something that you want?" And the family said yes, so that we can bring more awareness and get more support. From my Facebook standpoint, when I first saw it, I said, I don't want to just relive that. Because there's some people in my community who went through that, and I was very conscious of them, but I did want us to address it. And the best way for us to address it is to start talking, start feeling, and start creating, and start building, and start listening to the community who's asking for changes.
Andrew, when you first had this story come across your radar, I mean, was it the video you saw first? Did the family reach out? How did this first get on your radar? And what was your very first reaction, your very first thought?
I'm going to give a shout out to a sister from the Somali community from Ontario, Sahra. She reached out to me and said, "Hey, have you seen this video?" And I sent her a list of questions like, how long has the video been out for? Are the parents okay? Is the boy getting medical treatment? What is going on with the kids involved? Has this institution addressed it? Has that institution addressed it? Who from those places have done something? And then from there, the very last thing I said was, I want mom's number, and I want to be able to talk to the family and make sure they're okay. So I was reached out to by the Black community, the Ugandan Association, and the Somali community, and they said, this is going on. What are we going to do to address it? And my thing is, like, I definitely understand that there's issues in the community, but my job is just to amplify the wishes of the family. I'm not here to, overtake someone else's cause or challenges and say, hey, this is Andrew, he's doing this. I'm only here to say, this community member needs help, and I'm going to help them, and this is how I'm going to do it. So they reached out to me. I was able to meet mom, the sweetest woman in the world. She's Ugandan. My kids are half Ugandan. My queen is Ugandan. My kid's grandma is Ugandan. They call her Jaja. So we actually had a conversation in some of the words I know in Ugandan with mom. And that meant a lot to me because that's my community too. I mean, I'm Jamaican and Canadian and Grenadian. You can see the flag. But, you know, in the Black community, in the diaspora, there's really great pieces of unity there. And as soon as I found out where the community was, I went down to Roslyn. We met with the family and we got on camera and we talked about a few things and we asked for changes to these institutions and we asked for accountability in this situation.
I'm getting some interesting comments on our live chat. Ustock says beating is not a strong enough word for what happened to this young man from Roslyn School. Tawny says with those punks that assaulted this young man, can we say, what the hell's wrong with the parents? I mean, can some of the responsibility maybe be put on them? Others, I mean, there's actually a whole bunch of people talking about the parents here. Sharon says we need to not only listen, but hear what this community is saying. Laurel says, I don't need to see the video to care about this young man and his family. Daniel says, my son sent me a short video and a large part of the problem can be attributed to social media. It's worth pointing out, if I'm understanding this story correctly, the video is actually recorded and posted by one of the young people involved in the assault. I mean, which blows my mind. I mean, to be honest, I'm grateful that they posted it because it's drawing attention to something that has obviously not been addressed and not been adequately dealt with. Andrew, when it comes to the conversations that you've been privy to with Edmonton's Ugandan community, some representatives of the Somali community, based on even your own personal experience, Andrew, is this a one-off? I mean, is this stuff happening all the time? I mean, is this a common experience for students of color?
Well, Ryan, these are questions that we got to ask the community. And I feel as though the community 10 months ago, when we marched to the legislative grounds in Edmonton, Alberta, I feel like we made a really big stance. And that wasn't just Black people, that was white people, that was Asian people, that was First Nations, Métis, Inuit, that was LGBTQ, that was Christian, that was Muslim, that was American, that was Canadian. That was everyone coming together and saying, look, it's happening in the United States, but it also happens here. What are we going to do to address this effectively? And I have to say this because, there's a lot of talk about, the parents and the boys. I don't want any harm to those boys. Nobody in the Black community is saying we want revenge and we want to go and get these guys. We actually want to help those young men figure out what's going on in their lives. They probably got a whole lot of challenges or things going on. Maybe they need supports. Do they need counseling? Do they need a restorative justice? How can we reconcile these communities? How can we bridge the gap between the Black community and white community? What stories need to be shared? And also, how can these institutions employ the services of these community organizations that are largely doing this work without them? Like, Black Owned Market is doing incredible work. They've created resources for this family. They created a letter campaign. The Africa Center is currently working with this group of in the family. Emmanuel and Dunya, I talked to them last night. They're working right hand in hand with Mom and Paso, and of course their point person, who's Mr. Menya Bakari, who I met on Saturday. Talked to him on Friday, and he's the point person for the family. They have all supports in place. But my question is, how are we going to get back to that harmony that Edmonton needs? Like, we can't have situations like this happen and then say, well, those guys are, they're getting charged or they're expelled, and that's it. We're never going to hear from them again. We got to protect those boys. We got to make sure those boys have that healing moment where they're like, this was a moment that happened in my life, but this isn't the only moment that's happening in my life. I want to find a way to become an active and productive member of society and change the circumstances that led me to even thinking of recording it, thinking of saying the N-word, or even thinking of beating up that child. Like, there's a lot of healing that needs to happen. I won't say that this is something frequent, but I will say that it is common, based on the fact that I've heard so much already from the community who said that happened to me and nothing happened as a result, and it scarred me, and I just wanted some changes. And I think now in 2021, this is the time to actually do something and not just put out, a tweet here, a tweet there, a statement here, and a statement there. That's going to do nothing, guys. We actually have to do the work at this point.
Well, I totally agree. I mean, I think I think social media has an immense power. Obviously, messages can be amplified very quickly. But when it comes down to it as well, it's not real life. And we talk
Right.
about slacktivism and how we'll tweet about something or like something or retweet something and feel like our work is done here when really there's evidence that a significant amount of work needs to be done, both in the microcosm, right, like on this playground and and in this school, but also, as a bigger part of society. You referenced Black Lives Matter demonstrations last summer. It was like these seeds were planted. I had a conversation with a friend who happens to be a visible minority, but I don't think you have to be. I don't necessarily your ethnicity matters when you endeavor to see the momentum continue. I think that that's something that would be a shared perspective of many people, regardless of background, maybe even for different reasons. But he invoked talk about idle no more, and he said, you remember when like the entire country woke up with the idle no more movement? But if you really, and then you could maybe make the argument, Andrew, that maybe that led to more momentum behind the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, and then maybe that's going to, we hope, lead to more momentum to things like maybe the Liberals fulfilling their promise to end water drinking advisories on reserves. I can get off on these tangents, but my point is that things happen that mobilize millions of people. But what we need to do is realize that after the rallies and after the clever placards and signs, and I'm not taking anything away from that, but then we all need to go to work, and it needs to be an ongoing commitment.
Agreed. And I'm just going to add to that because I believe that there's some amazing teachers right now in the district that are doing this work right now. Brody Calvitis, Mr. Dan Scratch, Rick Stanley, Mr. Semenek down at Emilsert High School. There's a Skona Black Students Association that is involved. There's civil rights groups that are being created. Anti-racism committees are being created. But I think that needs to be embedded into these institutions. I think that some of these institutions, there are some gaps in there because there's not enough representation or authentic representation. So we need the people who are these liaisons or these consultants or these representatives for these institutions to speak up and speak out. In some cases, like I'm in a vulnerable position. Like my job, I work for the board, but I'm here talking about a situation that's happening in the board because it's close to me, because that could have been my kid. My kid's 5 years old. In 9 years, he's past those age. If he gets beat up, am I going to sit down and be quiet and say, well, the board or whichever institution has control of this? I still have the right as a dad to say something. And it's not like I'm saying it in a bad way, like I think that these institutions are horrible and this and that. I'm thinking that we need to merge some of our ideas. The community has ways of addressing situations, of restoring justice, of reconciliation that should be heard. And I'm waiting for the day where groups like the Black Teachers Association, Bom Yeg, Africa Center are embedded into these institutions, and their information and insights and resources are applied and also compensated, because this work, largely for a lot of us, we're doing it for free and it's taxing. Like, look at social media on Twitter and Instagram. Everyone's watching this stuff and they're reliving it. And then what happens when we turn off our screens? We're dealing with those emotions all the time. So I'm hoping we can do something as a city. I know we're the city of champions. There's great people. There's great white people. There's great Black people. There's great Asian people. There's great everyone in this city. And we've had movements like this happen and come and go. But I think it's time for us to keep pushing. And I think it's time for our institutions to look in the mirror. And I think it's time for society to look in the mirror and let's do something.
Yeah. And Andrew, I think that this is, I mean, you're obviously like a pretty engaged community member. Anybody that knows you knows that, but it's also very evident in the way that you communicate, your passion, your sense of community, your sincerity shines through. But this is a message that, I mean, I don't care if you're watching in Victoria or Winnipeg or Halifax or for that matter, Kentucky or Frankfurt. This story could resonate with you. The story does resonate with you because it's something that people can relate to or come at from a number of different angles, right? And, I'd be curious to know I want to make sure that I give credit where it's due. The Black Teachers Association of Alberta, was that Sarah Adamako Ansa that co-founded that with you? Is that?
Yes, Queen Sarah is currently doing, we call her Queen Sarah because everyone who interacts with her spiritual presence is something so beautiful. And last night I talked to Sarah for an hour and we just we talked about education. We talked about what it was like to be a Black man and be a Black woman and a Black educator. And I talked about being a Black parent, and she talked about her family. And the whole entire time we were just saying, we started this organization, this group, to address issues like this, but the hope was that these issues wouldn't happen, or that they would be decreased, or that people would see the value in the work that we're doing. And for the longest time, we were ignored, we were dismissed, we were told, we got things under control, and then 3 weeks later something would happen and we would be on the scene, and then other people would come and get on the scene and say, oh, we were doing this. We think it's time that we walk in hand. Like, I'm completely and totally honest and open to working with any organizations to decrease or eliminate racism, to address anti-racism and inclusion and diversity, and to make this city the beautiful city that we all know that it is. The only problem is, for some institutions, it's like, well, if we let these people involved, it makes us look like we're not doing our job. No, that's not what it is. In our community, if everyone pulls their resources and we get the job done, the job gets done. We don't have to worry about who did this and who did that. We'll just get the job done together.
I was the reason and by the way, with Sarah, if I can get personal for a second, I know you and I both knew her twin brother David Adamakansa, who's just an absolute legend. May he rest in power. David was born with a heart that couldn't keep up with the rest of them, because he was an absolute machine. And I feel like when David passed, that Sarah kind of like inherited. I mean, it was like she like powered up double time, which is really remarkable. I wanted to ask you what you and her and others involved with the Black Teachers Association of Alberta, if there's been any. I mean, what have you? What's been the most striking thing? Has there been like a moment of enlightenment? Has there been an epiphany? I mean, was there something that you didn't quite realize before you got that group together? That's the group itself, that its existence has paved the way for you to better understand.
We realized that largely some of the conversations that we were having were within the community, and it needed to reach the entire city. It needed to reach all of education. It needed to reach every single organization, whether that's business, that's politics, that's community, that's sports, but every single person needed to start talking about situations like that and this, in order to effectively make society better. Like, we saw that George Floyd, I didn't even see the George Floyd video. I saw the beginning of it and I turned it off. And Sarah said she did the exact same thing. And she said, what can we do to ensure that Edmonton, Alberta is the safest place in the world? And not only that, what can we do to make sure our students have the supports they need, and our Black teachers, who are usually the 1 or 2 Black teachers in the entire school, what supports can they get? And how can we develop a relationship with allies who don't necessarily have our skin color, but they are open to new ideas and open to a different version of education, where we actually address the fact that anti-racism is necessary. So Sarah and I got together and we started calling up all of our friends. We got on WhatsApp, we reached out to our elders, and we said, collectively, what can we do in Edmonton and Calgary and Lethbridge and Red Deer to make this city safe, to make sure that we're talking about real situations and not sweeping them under the rug, or just putting out one tweet that doesn't even address anything. We actually wanted to be on the ground level, meeting with parents, meeting with students, holding professional development sessions, and trying to make sure that these institutions create employment opportunities that address this work. So that was one of the lightning rods that got us going. But I'll tell you right now, as soon as the institutions incorporate us and bring us in, that's when things are going to change. Until then, we're just, having handpicked people to do certain work, and that's not going to work at all.
This is an interesting, Andrew, I know you got to get your day rolling here. Kim on our live chat says, this is the type of thing that's missing from the curriculum that we're talking about. By the way, we'll be talking to Carla Peck tomorrow, right around this time, 9:05 Mountain, 11:05 Eastern live. They've just launched a new website related to Alberta's curriculum, which is really something that we're certainly interested in following up on. I think the entire country knows that Alberta is redoing its curriculum right now, and that early draft editions of the K-6 curriculum have troubled a lot of folks. Andrew, Kim says, we need empathy and expectations included in curriculum, not necessarily religion and history. Other people are writing in saying we need anti-racism spelled out in curriculum. Uh, how important? Yeah, I mean, you're clapping almost here. Take us into your thoughts on the role that you think curriculum should play.
Well, it's really good to have like policies and policy announcements and saying that we're working on this and that. What I want to see is when you open up a textbook, the actual term anti-racism and a definition that has been agreed upon by educators, professors, teachers. I want systemic racism to be embedded into the curriculum. I mean, think of all the other terms that they study in social studies. You study genocide, you study the Holocaust, you study war crimes. Can we not embed anti-racism or discrimination or racism awareness, or can we not address those things specifically and not just a small little definition in the margin? Can we have a couple pages in there? Could we have a chapter? Could we talk about civil rights? Can that be embedded into the curriculum? Could we talk about, communities that have done amazing things like the Amber Valley community? Could we talk about the contributions made from our Asian community, from our Muslim community, from all communities? How can we support each other? And unfortunately, right now, some of these texts don't have it. Some of the curriculum, I was told that one of the curriculum advisors said that anti-racism was a myth, or that the challenges related to racism was a myth. And I could tell him quite clearly as a black man that if that's a myth, then I believe in Santa Claus and the Easter Bunny, because there's no such, like, I'm living that life right now. I'm seeing black boys getting beaten up and Muslim sisters hijabs getting taken down, and I'm seeing the Asian community mobilizing, saying stop Asian hate. And all we really want to do is, we don't want anyone to feel bad. We're not here to say, oh, white people are bad or these people are bad. We love everybody. We just want you guys to love us and help us and hear our stories so that we can become a better society. And I don't think anyone should object to that. I think we should embrace that at this point in time in 2021. Or we can't wait until 2031, 2041, 2051 to see change. We can do it right now, guys. So I'm hoping we get it done. And I believe in the city of Edmonton. I believe in our community. I'm hoping to start believing in some leaders in these institutions. And I think I will start to believe more when they start reaching out to our communities and talking to us face to face or screen to screen or whatever it takes, or mouth to mouth on the phone. But we can get this stuff done. It's just, we got to stop dragging our feet. We got to stop trying to do it our way and start looking at other ways to get the work done.
And more people of color seeking positions as school trustees, and more people of color having access and barriers removed to post-secondary education to pursue the dream of becoming a high school teacher or junior high teacher, and more people of color feeling welcome and represented at boardroom tables and making decisions and involved in politics and at the community level, right? A community associate, right? I mean, like, this
Right,
is
right.
it's like all these conversations that we have, they all come together. Whether you could have a conversation about post-secondary tuition and you could tie it into this without stretching too hard. You wouldn't hurt yourself.
Exactly. And I have to even give a ridiculously huge shout out. I just was made aware of this last night, that there is a candidate for Edmonton Public School Board trustee for Ward A. Her name is Belen Samuel. She has been at the forefront. She has been on the front lines doing this work, committed to the community, to the Black community, to the Indigenous community, to all communities in the city of Edmonton. She is the change that I think is necessary in Edmonton Public Schools and also in education. So I couldn't be happy for her. She's a Eritrean descent. So kamalaha, kamalahi to all my people from Eritrea. I love you guys. And I think that this is the change that we actually have to see: more representation, different voices at the table. And, Edmonton's a beautiful place, and we're all just going to learn from each other, and we're all just going to grow, and we're all just going to make it better. So Belen doing this work is gonna be the change that we need in the city, and I couldn't be happier for her.
I don't know if this is going to take us off on a tangent. I don't know the background to this, but audience member that uses the handle Adventure Cycling says racism or anti-racist myth. Says just ask AGP what it was like at the Castle Downs YMCA in the early 2000s. It's no myth at all. What are they
I know
talking
who that
about?
is. I know who that is, and I'm not gonna say his name because then his Twitter is gonna get blown up. But I just want to say, B, thank you for speaking. He was one of our mentors. He was about 25-year-old guy, and I got my membership when I was 14. And there was lots of challenges for our kids. There was lots of misinformation. And so we started talking to the members and saying, hey, well, this guy doesn't necessarily have these supports. How can we help him? Or, this guy's got this challenge. How can we help him? Or this person speaks this language. Is there a liaison that can help? And the YMCA, like, embodied everything that the community wanted, and they helped us. They sat with us. They stayed in the gym. They put on basketball games for us. They got us new basketballs. We would train with them. They let us sometimes even train a little bit later. And I was so lucky to be in that atmosphere, because literally from there, I was able to get a college scholarship. I was able to go to U of A on scholarship and then go pro, because people like this invested time in the community. They didn't just say, well, that's a black kid, I don't know anything about him, and let me do my life. They're like, this is an Edmontonian. He looks different than me, but he's got a heart like me. He's got legs like me and eyes like me and a smile like me. Why can't we help these people? And so I commend B, I'm just going to say B, for sending that message, because he definitely was around those times where there was miscommunications towards the Black community. He stood up for us. And there's amazing people from Ukraine, from Eastern European countries that immigrated to this country, just like we did from the Caribbean and from Africa. And we're working together. And we're going to make this society better. And we're going to make Edmonton the best city and the city of champions. Again, we just got to do the work.
Pretty sweet to hear when a community hub or a community center embodies what community is supposed to be all about. That's a pretty encouraging story. You've been putting in the work for decades, man. And it's one of the reasons why I feel so strongly about you, Andrew, and I really appreciate you making yourself available.
I love you too, Ryan. You can say you love me.
Oh,
brother.
I love you, buddy. I've got trust me.
You.
If I was telling people, like, when this COVID thing is over, like, I mean, unless it's creepy, I'm not going to be creepy. But if people are up for hugs and high fives, I'm all over hugs and high fives.
I just think, honestly, in our city, we gotta, get your vaccine, what you gotta do, and hug each other and walk hand in hand. Go for talk to your neighbors. Like, my neighbor's so awesome. They're from China. Every time we're out there in the backyard, he gives me a hot dog. He gives me a beverage. He says, "Hey, Andrew, how you doing?" And the other side, we have neighbors from Ukraine, and we come outside and we talk to the dads. Sometimes if they don't put their garbage out, I put their garbage out for them, or we shovel each other's snow. That's Edmonton. That's Canada. That's Alberta. That's who we are. That's what we do. We take care of each other. We're not people out there trying to beat people up and do all that stuff. And if we are, we got to rectify that and tell those kids, look, our city, that's not who we are. That's like, if that's who you are, you got to figure out in your heart who you want to be. And I think that's what the parents are going to do moving forward. That's what the community is going to be doing moving forward. I have to give a shout out to Mayor Don Iveson, because he contacted me very early in this process and said he wanted to talk to the family, and I was able to connect him to the family, and he's been working with them. So shout out to the mayor of the city of Edmonton, who's always been amazing. We're going to miss him. I hope the new candidate is awesome too. But that's what Edmonton is, coming together, working for each other, and taking care of business and loving each other. So Ryan, I have no problems telling you I love you, brother.
Love you too,
and every
AGP.
White person out there, Black person, let's love each other again, guys. Let's start building. And I think it's gonna happen.
Maybe you should run for mayor. Just planting that seed.
Are you gonna help me, or
I've withheld an official endorsement to this point, which would mean that it's up for grabs. So we could probably get that ball rolling pretty quick. That's not a basketball pun, but it could be.
Mayor would be a cool job. It would be a cool job.
Yeah, but, I mean, it's a lot of work. I know you're not afraid of a lot of work.
No.
It requires doing all the stuff. I mean, there's a lot of glory stuff. There is. But then there's a lot of stuff that's not glorious and it's boring, but it's like tactical policy stuff. And actually part of me thinks that, I mean, knowing you, I think that's where a lot of your skills, I mean, you're a great sort of forward facing guy. You're a good face of an organization. You're a great spokesperson. You can get a crowd going. You can inspire people, but I also know that you love the nitty gritty. And so, hey man, maybe not this election, maybe next one. Let me just, if I'm the first, I'm blown away if I'm the first one to plant the seed, but if I am, I hope that it germinates a little bit. And who knows what might happen. Maybe we'll look back to this interview in 10 years and say, that was the first time we talked about it.
I have a great, I'll be honest, there's not many politicians that I know. There's a few politicians that I don't really agree with right now, but I do want to shout out Mayor Don Iveson, David Shepherd. He's been incredible. There's some really cool politicians that I dig and that I enjoy. I think I met Aaron Marquette the other day, and I think he's wonderful. He's got a beautiful story. If the time comes that, you know, maybe one day I would like to run for mayor, I will, but I have zero intention of doing that now. And the reason is I got my two babies, man. I got my son and my daughter, and I love them to death. And if I can't have Saturdays with them going to the park and putting a blanket out on the grass and having snacks and playing soccer, I can't say that I'm truly living my life. So my focus and dedication is to my babies, and to my queen, and to my culture, and to, of course, education. Being a teacher is the greatest job in the world. I have to shout out to all the teachers right now. You're dealing with COVID, you're dealing with being in quarantine, and we're online, and then we're in class, and then we're online, we're in class, we're trying to get vaccines, we're trying to do all this stuff, and you're on the front line. And I just want to say to all teachers in the city, I freaking love you guys. Teachers changed my life. Tom Alniski, Wilma Griffith, Mrs. Dragatis, Kelly Maroney, teachers changed my life. And I think now more than ever, we got to start supporting our teachers. And if I can do anything to help that get going, I'm going to. But there's so many others of us talking vocally and getting stuff done. So God bless all of you teachers. After this year, I'm hoping they give us an extra month for vacation, because this has been a hell of a year. And I think you guys deserve all the best. So that's my salute and tribute to teachers in the city of Edmonton and province of Alberta. I freaking love you guys.
They call him AGP. That's Andrew Parker, co-founder of the Black Teachers Association of Alberta. Thank you for this, my man, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Appreciate you.
Yeah, I love it. You know what I love is that Andrew gets really specific, and you can hear it. He's always